You are watching the Pan-African Daily TV with Dr. Susan Tata. The Africa we want: unity, consciousness, our culture, our spirituality, our history. One Africa for Africans worldwide. Motherland's calling its diaspora home. Join my voice. Join my team. Join my campaign. Campaign 21 hashtag 1 million subscribers on the Pan-African Daily TV YouTube. Be a volunteer. Apply now. Be the new Africa. Good evening, good day, good morning, good night to you, dear Pan-Africanists, those that are joining us on this live stream tonight. We want to thank you for your patience, for your indulgence, and for your support. Yeah, we know we're a little bit behind time, but as you know, this is Africa time. And I was just talking to Elder Omowale right now, who is live with us on the show, and he's like, Pan-Africanism is a kind of a spell. Yeah. So anytime we touch on this topic, something unnatural or unusual is always going to happen. So if you're joining in the stream, please make sure you click like, subscribe, and share, and invite one another to be on this very exclusive edition. Today, we want to talk about the Malcolm X Day commemoration and also the African Liberation Week. And I want to thank Professor James Small, who is sitting right here in the studio with us live on the Pan-African Daily TV, for reminding us of this simple correction. Now, why do we call it the Africa Day instead of the Africa Liberation Day? And so for that reason, we were inspired and motivated to call it the African Liberation Week. And in this week, we want to treat exceptional topic, particularly commemorating days that are very significant in the life of Africans worldwide, but are not conscious of it, particularly the Malcolm X Day. And for this reason, I'm very happy and honored that we're having our elder. When I say an elder, it's not just in terms of age. I'm talking about the work, the engagement, the commitment. Yeah, that Elder Omowale and his whole team of December 12th movement, which is what we're also going to learn today. Because sometimes we talk about other movements that are existing. We forget to understand that a lot of Africans, particularly African descendants in the Americas, have laid down their life, their lives, their fortune, their families, yeah, for humanity, for the freedom of the Africans worldwide. So whatever privileges that some of us Africans, be it in Europe, be it on the continent even, and in the diaspora, are enjoying today, maybe whatever privileges, I don't know what kind, yeah, some get scholarships, some are admitted into some kind of programs in the Americas and all over the world. Remember that it's because of the sacrifice of our brothers and sisters, particularly out there in the Americas, marching every day to commemorate great freedom fighters like Malcolm X and the others. They started it not today. They started it from birth until today and giving it up as a passation for their generations. So I want to really make it very clear, particularly for our Africans worldwide. Like I said, there's some privileges, whether we accept it or not. Even the death of our late brother George Floyd, if it was worldwide on the planet, that everywhere in the Asian continent or in Europe, people stood up, it is because there has been significant work by African leaders out there in this community that have not laid down their voice or their strength for the sake of the freedom of the African. So it is a very big honor when we have our elders like this come to share this knowledge, to educate us, to inform us, to empower us, and to keep the spirit of a freedom fighter for a liberated Africa. We are honored to have them anytime as guests on the Pan-African Daily TV. So I want to thank you, our dear elders, for joining us tonight. And we'll just go straight into the conversation without wasting time, on the topic, the Malcolm X Day. I want to start with Elder Omowale, who is the first time guest here on the Pan-African Daily. Of course, Professor James Moore, you have to introduce the show, and over to Elder Omowale. Over to you, Prof. Professor James Moore?
Yes, ma'am.
Over
you
to you.
Start with me first. Oh, yes. Well, Malcolm X was one of the most extraordinary freedom fighters we've had in the Western Hemisphere, and especially in modern times. This is a man born in 1925, whose father was a part of, and mom was a part of the Marcus Garvey UNIA. His father was murdered by the Ku Klux Klan and the white supremacists and racists in the Midwest. His mother was later taken away from the family when he was still a child and put in a mental institution. That was one way. When they couldn't get you on a crime, they used the mental hospital to incarcerate you. And that was harder to get out of than jail. And she did not get out until Malcolm was a minister in the Nation of Islam. And so this man, Malcolm X, who grew up, brilliant young man, as a youth, he did what most youth did. He was in the streets, partying, dancing. He even got into selling a little drugs and using a little for a while. And then he did a little burglary. All this happened when he was a teen. People don't realize he was a teenager. And he was arrested in Boston, sentenced to prison. Not so much for the burglary, but he was sentenced to prison because he had a white girlfriend who would not testify against him and accuse him of rape. And so they were so angry, a crime that normally gives you 1 to 2 years, they gave him something like 7 to 8 years. But while in prison, with the help of his brothers and sisters and a young man he met in prison, and with the support of his sister Ella, whom he lived with in Boston, he began to re-educate himself on the history of the world and the history of Africa, the history of the oppression of peoples. So by the time he left the prison and joined the Nation of Islam, founded by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he was already an educated man, equivalent of anybody's PhD in any university. He had remembered the dictionary from cover to cover. Could you imagine that? I couldn't even think of remembering a good chapter of a dictionary. But he was one of the most extraordinary intellectual minds that we had as a freedom fighter. And he was able to bring us to a conscious level of understanding what true Pan-Africanism was, understanding what fighting for human rights was. Even though the Pan-African movement started in the 1900s, and Nkrumah had taken it to the next level in 1958 when he called everyone, not everyone, I think it was 6 to 8 African states to Accra. And then it was taken to the next level when the OAU was founded in 1963. Well, Malcolm X was able to link African Americans up with Africa in a way no one had done before.
Absolutely.
Traveling to Africa, visiting the heads of states, visiting with our people, coming back and telling us about those journeys, establishing a parallel organization to the OAU called the Organization of Afro-American Unity, the OAAU. And of course, he was assassinated in the midst of those development because the West and the Eastern blocs was fighting in a concept they called the Cold War. Africa between 1958 and 1964 had literally thrown off the colonial yoke of Europe and was fighting now against the economic dominance, which Kwame Nkrumah called neocolonialism.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, we had freedom fighters in Namibia, Mozambique, Angola, Guinea-Bissau, fighting for their freedom armed struggles against the Portuguese, and South Africa, and Israel, who was supporting South Africa, and Germany. And so while the West was trying to woo these African nations over to their capitalism, the Soviets were trying to move them over to their form of socialism, communism. Well, Malcolm stepped right in the middle of that by letting the world know the hypocrisy of America and how it had violated and was violating the human rights of, at that time, 25 million African Americans, and how we had lived under genocide and terror for centuries in this country. Well, that did not make the US State Department or the CIA or Interpol or MI6 happy. And though he had a crisis and a quarrel with the Nation of Islam, there was more fear about his work in the Pan-African world and his fight around human rights that would bring him to get ready to come before the United Nations. He was assassinated. But his teachings to our people still reverberate today as though it was yesterday. He's one of the most beloved leaders we've ever had in North America.
Correct. And I think Africa as a whole.
Yes, I know. I heard that Malcolm X Day was celebrated all over the continent. It makes me so happy. You know, yes. Omowale can tell you about the struggle to keep it alive by the December 12th movement. They'll talk about 125th Street, but she used to talk about that was 32 years, but they've been in the movement fighting around Malcolm for nearly 50 plus years.
Right.
We want to hear something from Brother Clay on their perspective on Malcolm's ideology, his Pan-Africanism, his human rights struggle, and why they've made sure it's never forgotten and is celebrated.
Thank you very much, Professor James. Welcome, Elder Omowale. I mean, we just saw even the whole news of the December 12th movement on Tuesday, shutting down on this rally of shut down all the malls in Harlem to celebrate his 96th birthday. Just tell us a little bit about the movement, about your engagement, and about this particular day, and what Harlem represents to the Black African when they hear just that word. Harlem 1965.
Well, you can hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
okay. Yeah, I think I probably would just start in terms of what happened this particular May 19th. This would be the 96th commemoration and celebration of Malcolm X's birth. And he would have been 96 if he was alive now. But as Professor Small said, for the past 32 years, we have established in Harlem, which was Malcolm's schoolroom, where he taught us who we were and where we came from, and to love ourselves and to respect ourselves and to understand that we're an African people. And as he said, our roots are in Africa. And he used to say, you cannot hate the roots of a tree and not hate the tree. If you show me someone who hates Africa, and I'll show you someone who hates themselves. And so what our oppressors have been successful in doing to some degree has been to make us not aware of who we are. And Professor Smalls and I were talking recently about one of Malcolm's speeches, and he starts off the speech saying, who are you? And where did you come from? And what language did you speak? What names did you have? Your name wasn't Thomas or William or Bob. They don't have names like that where you come from. Who took your name? Who took your language? And then he ends it by saying, who is it that made you as dumb as you are? Of course, Malcolm could say that in the sense of not dumb intellectually, but dumb in the sense of your history and understanding of your history. And, you know, one of our great Pan-African scholars, Dr. John Henry Clark, used to always say that history is like a clock. It tells you where you are, where you've been, it tells you where you are, and it tells you where you have to go. And so Malcolm epitomized that understanding. And probably one of the things that distinguished him was, as Professor Smalls talked about some of his history, his mother and father, they were Garveyites, and they came out of the organizing of Marcus Garvey, who was probably one of the greatest organizers of African people outside the continent, in terms of at least the history of America. And his mother was a Garveyite, and his father, they were Garveyites. And so that, you know, is sometimes, you know, the kernels of your education, we used to always say this, sometimes you can't appreciate some things initially, and you have to grow into knowledge. You have to grow into things. So you can look at something on Tuesday and not understand it, but your experiences between Tuesday and Saturday. So on Saturday, when you look at it again, you're much more insightful because you've had the experiences and the occurrences that make you appreciate it deeper. And so Malcolm, as Dr. Small said, he went through many periods of his life discovering himself. And when he joined the Nation of Islam, one of the first things it did was it gave him the chance to expand his intellect, which had been confined to petty crime but very powerfully to understand the United States not from its propaganda, but from its hypocrisy. Because at some point in time, he organized prostitutes and sold drugs, and he saw politicians who would say one thing out of one side of their mouth, but would be there buying drugs and buying women at the other side. So Malcolm very early saw the hypocrisy of America, but he didn't understand at that time fully the intellectual nature of what's underlying under that hypocrisy. And so when he joined the Nation of Islam, it gave him an opportunity to expand his intellect in studying our people, in understanding the necessity of understanding who we were. And then he just blossomed in that regard. And he blossomed in an organization that had a different view of who African people were. And so Malcolm was such a powerful intellectual, he was such a powerful organizer, and most importantly, he was a powerful speaker. And he had a way of taking very complex questions and making them very simple so that the average person in our community could get the essence of what he was saying. And that's probably one of the most important things of a propagandist, to take complex questions and make them very simple so people could understand them. And so on the streets of Harlem, Malcolm taught so many people who they were. And so we thought it was very important in our contribution to continuing people's understanding of who this revolutionary was, that in Harlem should respect that. And so almost 32 years ago, we made a decision that, you know, the government, the United States government and its hypocrisy, they say that they want to honor somebody, but what they really want to do is they want to take the revolutionary essence out and place it with something that makes them all right in those people's eyes, you know. And so what Malcolm did was to show us their hypocrisy. So we said we didn't want there to be a Malcolm X holiday that the United States government did, because the United States government are the ones who killed him. We wanted people to respect him because Black people respected him, African people, and other people, freedom-loving people respected him. So we asked the businesses on 125th Street to close on Malcolm's birthday, whether it's on Monday, Sunday, Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever day May 19th came. We asked the businesses in the Central Harlem Business District to close. And initially, when we made that call, they called the police, they arrested some of the protesters. At one time, Dr. Tata, they put a police officer in the front door of every store on 125th Street to say to them that you don't have to close. And we said to them, the police don't shop there, Black people shop there. So who do you want to listen to? Do you want to listen to the police, or do you want to listen to the people who put their money in your store? So it was a battle. It was a battle. And one time they tried to get Malcolm's children some of his children to be opposed to the shutdown. I mean, we went through numerous struggles, but after 32 years, on May 19th at 12 o'clock, we have a Black Power rally right on 125th Street and 7th Avenue, right in front of the Adam Clayton Powell Harlem office building. And then at 1 o'clock sharp, we start our Black March, and we march around Central Hall asking the stores to close. And I think Dr. Small sent you a short video that they did on one of the news channels.
Yes.
And you know, there's some other stuff I'll send you, you know, but over the years, there's some people, whatever they're doing, they make sure on May 19th, they come there. And, you know, it was also very coordinated with, because even before we started shutting down the stores on 125th Street, Dr. Smalls had already begun to organize a pilgrimage to Malcom in New Jersey. And so that had been even going on longer than that. So in the morning, that day of May 19th, it's really a Malcom day. In the morning, buses would be organized to take people to the gravesite in terms of paying homage to him, in terms of that. And they would come back and they would join also the 125th Street business shutdown. So that's that 32-year history. It goes on till today. This past May 19th, I think one store tried to stay open, you know, but all the stores, all the major corporate stores, Starbucks, Whole Foods, I mean, a lot of these major stores and stuff, they're all closed, you know, and so that tradition we think is very important to keep going. I always tell people that in 2000, I remember the stores had closed, and I remember there was a little kid, he was standing next to his mother, and he said to his mother, "Mommy, why are all the stores closed?" And his mother said, "Because it's Malcolm X's birthday." And I think at that moment, it really captured the essence of what we were trying to say. We wanted to demonstrate that we had the power. You know, Malcolm was a man of action, and many people celebrate him in many different ways. But the December 12th movement, we took up the question that he was a man of action. And one of the things we wanted to do was an action, and to show the power of Black people to change their actual conditions, to make things happen, and, you know, through unity and consistency. And so that's kind of the story of that. You know, the December 12th movement grew out of a number of Black people, a tremendous collection of tremendous individuals who in their own right have their own histories of struggle, but came together back in 1986 to build the December 12th movement. And in terms of the leadership of that movement, many of them have passed away. The chairperson is still here, one of the original members, Sister Viola Plummer. But one of the things that we took up in the December 12th movement was in terms of one of Malcolm's other attributes, which was Pan-Africanism. And I think Dr. Smalls had also sent to you some of the videos of, in 1972, the first African Liberation Day that was celebrated here in the United States with a massive march in Washington, D.C. And many of those people who formed the formed the December 12th movement, who took part in organizing that mass demonstration in terms of, and that African Liberation Day was really a reflection of, with the creation of the Organization of African Unity, one of its main tasks and goals was to make sure that all of the countries on Africa were decolonized. And that was one of the central purposes of it. And so that African Liberation Day in 1972 came together to organize people that our connection to Pan-Africanism, which has been a movement going on for decades, but also to give concrete material support to the African liberation struggles going on in the continent, in the Portuguese colonies of Guinea-Bissau and the Cape Verde Islands, to Angola, to Mozambique, also in the struggles in Southern Africa and in Namibia, those struggles, and to give material support to that. So the African Liberation Day and the African Liberation Support Committee supported those struggles through raising funds and resources to help those struggles win victory. And in that regard, it helped build that solidarity and not only between Africans in the diaspora here, but also Caribbean, in terms of who continue to play a role in their own liberation in terms of the fight against European colonization. And so as we move forward as a December 12th movement, certainly the commemoration, the celebration of Malcolm on May 19th has been an integral part of our work. But hand in hand with that has been also Malcolm's cry that our struggle in the United States is not a civil rights struggle, but is a human rights struggle. That you can't go to your oppressor and then expect him to give you justice. That the justice that we seek and have sought is at an international level. We were kidnapped from Africa, and we were brought here and enslaved over 400 years of free labor and torture and murder and rape. And so that, and the production of America, the growth of America, even which today, Dr. Tata, a sister who's who works for the New York Times, worked in coordinating a magazine effort by the New York Times. They called it the 1619 Project, which was really a revisitation of the history of America, not from some comic book, but from the reality of what built America. And these right-wing racist white people here are so inflamed by that because they want to tell a nursery rhyme, about how it was built, that she was supposed to be up to get tenure in the university, and they denied her tenure because there was so much pressure that they didn't like the fact. In fact, in many of the states in the United States, they have banned the teaching of the true history. So they banned that 1619 Project because it comes at the question of patriotism. They rather have the lie and to promote patriotism and U.S. aggression and foreign policy than the truth. And so she was just denied tenure. And there's a battle going on right now of people now saying, no, you can't do that. But one of the things about the 1619 Project was it began to talk about, as Malcolm did, that ours was always a struggle for human rights, which is an international question. You can't tell me whether I'm a human being or not. That is something by birth that I am. And in fact, for Africa, that was the birth of civilization. The birth of human beings came out of Africa. So I dare you try to flip history and make it that I'm not a human being. I have to petition you for you to recognize me as a human being when the birth of humanity came out of Africa. And so Malcolm always raised that our struggle is for human rights, and human rights cannot be determined by your oppressor. So he guided us toward petitioning the international community to appreciate and understand the struggle of, quote, African Americans as an international human rights question. So the December 12th movement very early took up the question that our struggle for liberation produced political prisoners who are fighting just for that cause to liberate us as a national question for us. And in that regard, we are political prisoners. And it led us to, at one point back in early 1988, I think around 88, 89, to talk with some of the Puerto Rican revolutionaries who started a campaign around the question of freeing political prisoners. And out of that, we took up the struggle of what Malcolm said, that we have to go to the international community and demand recognition of who we are. So we spent a number of years going to the United Nations Human Rights Commission in Geneva, petitioning the world to the actual conditions that Black people face in the United States and our relationship in terms of Pan-Africanism to Africans in the diaspora, wherever they are outside of Africa, and to make that link. And we've done that over a number of years, which at some point in time, through guidance and education and dialogue with some of our African leaders, that in fact, the struggle for our conditions and our human rights deserve reparations. And one of the culminations of our work was in Durban in 2001, when the World Conference Against Racism said it is our turn to talk about our conditions. And they really kind of took a step back in that regard. And we took over 400 people to Durban, South Africa, to petition the world community that Black people's human rights had been violated, and that, as we were instructed by many African leaders from Nigeria, from Zimbabwe, from Ethiopia, from Ghana, that in fact in Nigeria, I remember the council of Nigeria, that in fact, that to ask for reparations, you first have to establish there's a crime. And the crime we're talking about are crimes against humanity, which rise to another level. And there are no statute of limitations. And so we took 400 people to Durban in 2001. And there was a tremendous victory there, because out of the Durban Declaration in 2001 was, in fact, slavery was a crime against humanity. It was, and it always should have been, a crime against humanity. And that gave a tremendous impetus to the question of reparations for enslavement and for colonization. Not just enslavement, but for colonization. Because, and because I know you might have something to ask me, but I'll say this, very recently, this professor was talking to us about the question of fascism. And, many times when we understand fascism, we understand it from what happened in Europe, and we understand it from what the Germans did to the Jews. And
correct.
And we even talk about what Mussolini in Italy did in invading Ethiopia. But it's coming out of Europe, like the victims of fascism were really the Europeans. But this brother was talking to us, this professor, and he was saying, but what were the colonies? What were the colonies except fascism? When you look at the German occupation of France and the kind of crimes that went on in France and the different places that Germany took over, then what was the colonization of Kenya? What was the colonization of Nigeria? What was the colonization of South Africa and Guinea-Bissau and Ghana? What were these names that they gave these places that were the birthplace of humanity? That people had not only their own names, their own culture, their own language, their own way of life. What was this interruption of their development as a people, as a continent? But actually the establishment of fascism. And people talk about in Namibia that it was in Namibia in the attack on, I think it was the Herero people, that in fact the Germans started their whole idea of extermination of the people. And some of those same generals that were in Namibia, the ones who came back and was dealing with the gas chambers for the Jews in Germany. So it was a different way of looking at the significance of us and the history of us fighting for our own independence and being denied our place on the world stage, because it was in Africa that many of these Europeans lost the power that they had over the world, in terms of that struggle. And that's the struggle that's going on right now. And we in the December 12th movement very much look at the question, and I know you might be aware of this, very recently at African Liberation Day in Zimbabwe, they built a national monument to Mbuya Nahanda, who was a revolutionary in Zimbabwe and led the first Shimaranga, or liberation war, in Zimbabwe. And when the colonials captured her, they hung her in the town square at that time, which was Salisbury, which is now Harare. And they let her body hang there. And they thought that that would destroy her. They didn't understand the power of African culture, the power of African spirituality. And Nahanda was a medium. And as a medium, she carried really the essence of who the Zimbabwean people were. So them thinking that by killing her, they did nothing but free her to imbue the revolutionaries. So during the second Shimaranga, they went to war with the spirit of Nahanda in them. I mean, they cast themselves into battle for their country with that spirit of Nahanda in her. And she said, when I die, my bones will rise up again and defeat you. And that's actually what happened. So they never understood. They thought by killing her, that was killing the revolution, but actually it was heightening the revolution because they always saw her more than just a person. They saw her the embodiment of who we were as a people. And I think people like Nahanda, they at that time they called her a medium, who carried the essence of our culture and spirit. But in fact, our great revolutionaries on the continent and wherever we are in the diaspora, that's who those revolutionaries are. They have to, the Europeans have tried to flip the script and take our spirituality and turn it into something meaningless and harmless, as opposed to a revolutionary force to free our people. And so the December 12th movement has tried to make its contribution to the international African struggle for liberation, and we're very happy to be on your show and engage with you in terms of our conversation.
Thank you very much, Elder Clay. It's a little bit from the volume and the technique, not so, but everybody, you still some special recordings with you and have you on the show a couple of times because this is profound knowledge what you've been putting out here. Now, I have one more question before we would switch over to Professor James Small. December 12th movement. Now, why this day, December? December 12th is a very remarkable day, particularly in my life. I mean, I'm a child of December 12th. And a lot of incidents, yes, and a lot of incidents actually have circulated on December 12th. And I begin to see, why December 12th? Why did you come to that date, December 12th? Reason, because we have to make this movement very, very powerful. Is it just created on December 12th to celebrate, commemorate the birthday of Malcom X, or December 12th at itself as an epic movement, which should be known as any other movement?
Well, we arrived at December 12th because in New York State at that time, a couple of things came together that some of our brothers, members, had been going to a retreat in upstate New York and had been stopped by the police, and guns were planted on them because the police had a real problem with our work and our community. And so they stopped them on a highway, made them walk down the highway, and then searched the car. And in the car, they said they found guns, and they arrested them. Long story short, it led to a trial going on upstate. When we were in that trial, we also saw there was another trial going on. And that was that people who had been imprisoned in that county, the Ku Klux Klan, many of the security guards were members of the Klan. The Ku Klux Klan is a long historical racist right-wing group that has made victims of Black people for years. And they were torturing them and such. And when they saw all of us come up for our brother's trial, they let us know about what was happening there. And they said there's been a long history of abuse and da-da-da-da-da-da. And so what happened was that we found out also that there had been a young lady who had been kidnapped by some white police officers and rapists and was tortured by them. And so they called us to come support them. And so at that time, it was a very high pitch in the movement for human rights in the city. And they asked us, because of that connection from seeing each other in the courtrooms there, they asked us to come up. And on December 12th is the day that a massive rally left New York to go upstate New York to struggle against the Ku Klux Klan and racism. And at that time, it was called the December 12th Coalition, because there were a number of different groups that had come together to do that. But that continuing struggle eventually morphed into not just a coalition anymore, but a movement. But that day, December 12th, there was a massive rally that took place upstate. It was almost like 60 cars, maybe 25 buses of people went upstate, traveled almost 60 miles upstate for a rally. And that was so significant because they left New York to go to a rally upstate, and they had never seen a rally like that upstate, you know, but it happened on December 12th. So we thought that that date of December 12th was an important date because of the events that were taking place, you know, and since that time, and so that's why it was the December 12th movement, from the coalition to the December 12th movement, and it brought together some different people, as I told you before, that ended up forming the December 12th movement leadership. A brother, a very long-term brother who, and Dr. Small knows all of these people. One of them was Sonny Abubadika Carson, who comes out of Brooklyn, who's a real revolutionary nationalist. Comes Ilumbe Braff, a tremendous Pan-Africanist who taught probably people in this United States about Africa. Tremendous intellectual and activist. Father Lawrence Lucas, who is a Catholic priest, and one of those kind of revolutionary Catholic priests in that sense. And Coltrane Shimaranga, a brother who really taught many Black men and sisters how to organize and to take the streets and to be disciplined, you know, in terms of revolutionary nationalism. So those people really came and gelled, and Sister, who's currently still our chairperson, Sister Viola Plummer. So they came together as that leadership, and the movement has continued since then. But that's the origin of December 12th. It came out of struggle. And so the date came together because of the struggle that was going on at that time.
Beautiful. I mean, we are coming up, with Professor James Small and others from the Sons of Africa, a calendar, a Pan-African calendar, which is going to be universal. That's why these dates are very, very significant, important. And I just put down the December 12th movement day, and just like the Malcolm X Day, the George Floyd Day, and all these liberation days, we have a Pan-African calendar that we're building up with the professors out there to have a unique calendar on its own, because these are very important, significant dates that Africans must remember, must keep. But just like every other calendar, we actually mixing up. But this new decade of Pan-Africanism, we're coming up from the Pan-African Daily TV and the movement out there with a Pan-African calendar. And the 12th of December movement has been noted down today. Like I said, I'm a daughter of December 12th and an event evolving. So it's a freedom and a liberation day in every aspect, starting from this movement of this coalition right now to the December 12th movement. Is going to be an epic in the lives of Pan-Africanism and Africans worldwide. So it's been noted. And I really want to thank you, Elder Clay, for this informative and educative session. I want to go back to Professor James Small. Professor James Small, he mentioned something about the African Liberation Day, particularly involving in the activities of Malcolm X. And for all our viewers, I know you already know that the Malcolm X documentary is on Netflix. I've been watching it throughout this. This is a documentary that every African child should watch. Netflix is free now everywhere on the continent and available. Just put in the Malcolm X, and I think it's about who killed Malcolm X, but it's a really explicit documentary. And all the documentaries provided or produced by the Happy and even the December 12th, we're going to put all that collection together under the December 12th movement and the Malcolm X Day. So history can be distorted again. Professor James Small, over to you.
Yes, ma'am. I always say history erases the oppressor's mystery. History erases the oppressor's mystery. And when you're clear on the historical behavior of your ancestors, then you're clear on the projection of your future plans. So that's extremely important to note. I thank my brother Omowale. He's such a brilliant historian on the Pan-African movement that I'm so happy that he had the opportunity to be here with us. I wanted to, because I know we interfered in the middle of his workday. And he's probably in his office working, and do
Yes.
a show. So, but to come back to the question, when we think of Malcolm X, when we think of African Liberation Day, immediately in 1958, when Kwame Nkrumah called for the Conference of African Heads of States in Accra, Ghana, one of the first things they agreed upon was an African Freedom Day. But 5 years later, when the OAU was formed, they declared African Freedom Day to be African Liberation Day. Because even in 58, when they were in Accra, they were talking about the liberation movements and the kind of support we had to give the liberation movements and other African nations that was not yet free, including the fights in Cameroon, your own country. You know? So, and matter of fact, the Cameroon Federation or Coalition was a part of that meeting in Accra in 58. So that's something you need to know. Cameroon was a part of the group that formed OAU in its birth. And so if we know our history, if we understand that when African Liberation Day was declared, it was declared in 63 to be African Liberation Day because we had to be liberated economically, politically, culturally, and generally materially. We had to be liberated from exploitation. We had to be liberated from what Nkrumah called the coming neocolonialism, which is what dominates Africa today, where the corporate world from the West is controlling the mineral wealth in the soil of Africa, while our people are living in many instances in impoverishment, yet we have the greatest wealth, collective wealth on the planet Earth. And so that means Africa is not yet liberated. So African Liberation Day is apropos. That is how we should celebrate it. One day we will be able to celebrate African Freedom Day when the liberation is done. But we're not there yet. One day we'll be able to celebrate African Day. But we're not there yet. We are in the midst of a liberation struggle. We are in the midst of looking at how the French and the Americans overthrew President Gbagbo in Cote d'Ivoire when he was legitimately elected by his people, validated by the Cote d'Ivoire Supreme Court. But because he was a Pan-Africanist, they overthrew his government, took him to prison before the World Court, and twice the World Court said, you have no evidence against this man. But he's still not allowed to return to his country. His presidency has not been restored. Someone of our collaborators who work for the World Bank was put over the government of the people in Cote d'Ivoire. We saw what happened to our beloved brother and leader Sankara, murdered by France and his Francophone collaborators because he wanted to bring Pan-Africanism to the fore. Him and President Jerry Rawlings and other revolutionaries, Brother Mugabe, they had come together and says, we are going to defeat neocolonialism in Africa. We're going to take our wealth out of the hands of Europe and build hospitals and schools and roads for our children. And thank God that the people of the country of
Cote d'Ivoire
has finally come to the conclusion to put out an arrest warrant for Kampara, his murderer. I met both of them only 2 months before the president was killed, and I sat beside Kampara eating lunch, you know, and even after he killed the president, he wrote me a letter asking me to come to Burkina Faso to help with the program in agriculture that we had outlined. I asked him, did he lose his mind? But thank God the people of Burkina Faso have now declared him a criminal and have now formally charged him with the death of President Sankara. So we see these things. We see Zimbabwe struggle for years. The West, in violation of all international protocol, have put economic sanction on Zimbabwe because they would not submit to imperialism. They would not submit to neocolonialism. They tried to defame the name of Mugabe. But thank God our beautiful ancestor Mugabe stood his ground. ZANU-PF stood their ground. And Zimbabwe is learning how to take care of itself, feed itself, clothe itself, take care of its people medically, despite the criminal sanctions that the West have put on her. And so we've watched our people fight for liberation. So the liberation fight is not over. And that's why we say it must remain African Liberation Day, as our founding fathers thought it to be, until the continent is completely liberated, until South Africa, which is an illusion of liberation, is completely liberated. You cannot have your liberation and the enemy still control all of the wealth of your nation. You cannot have your liberation and the enemy still control 80% of the best farmland. You cannot have your liberation and your enemy controls your military. So South Africa is an illusion of independence, an illusion of freedom. And so the fight in South Africa continues for liberation, and we will achieve it. The South African people will achieve it, but we must achieve Pan-Africanism so we can help one another and not hurt one another. We must achieve Pan-Africanism so an African can move anywhere on that continent to look for work, to feed his family, without being attacked in the street by another brother, because his mind has been messed up with neo-colonial and colonial education. So our liberation have not yet been achieved. Until the day we choose a language, maybe Swahili, because it's the most largely spoken language on the continent, that every child and every nation on the continent of Africa must learn Swahili as their second language, as a way of us communicating one to the other. And all Africans in the diaspora must learn that Swahili so we can speak to each other outside of the language of the oppressors. So our liberation is still in process, it's in progress. What you're doing with Pan-African Daily TV is bringing information. You're informing the masses of African people in the continent, in Canada, in the US, in the Caribbean, of the need for Pan-Africanism, for the need for our unity, which is a part of that liberation struggle. Don't take yourself lightly. The enemy doesn't, which you well know. Malcolm X told me one thing, and the one and only time I met him, on the occasion I met with him, that true education is one of the tools that would help to liberate our people. And I've totally dedicated my life to that proposition.
Prof, thank you so very much. I mean, we can never thank you and thank all of you, our elders, for this incredible journey. And we all know that you're put here actually on this dimension, and every one of us on this purpose of the unity. And the key word is Pan-Africanism. No matter how we turn around, we look at even Agenda 2063 is the same thing, that the way forward for a united and a liberated Africa is Africans doing it by themselves for Africa. And the key word is Pan-Africanism. There is no way, no matter how they create these agendas, that they're going to get out of this key word Pan-Africanism. And I'm thanking you and thanking Elder Omowale for this battle, for this engagement. Education. What we're doing here is not just a mainstream media of reporting news and stories or whatever, but we're educating ourselves through scholars, experts, and advocate. I mean, people with track record. We're not just saying voices that just rose up yesterday and just say something because anyone has talking about people that have put it down and, signed a warrant of enter for their people. So it is a tremendous opportunity to have you. I saw the videos, like the tapes Elder Clay was talking about, and a lot of people are asking in the chat, can you play them? I can't play them because they're on YouTube, and YouTube is going to flag us out. You've already been seeing in the chat, watch your privacy standard or whatever, because we have elders that are actually, pouring out the content of what we're supposed to know. But I can guarantee you that so far so good. Thank you, Patrick Esurim, who is assuring me that everything is under control on the chat and community standard out there. Thank you for that, for taking care of that. But I want to assure the audience, this discussions and these tapes and these videos that Elder Wale and Professor James Moore are talking about is a collection of a library that they're putting out there for the African. So don't worry yourself. We're going to get our own platforms. We're going to get security in everything that we need to be able to convey these articles to you in a real format. Yeah. So don't worry. Professor James Moore, Elder Clay, I want to give you a feedback of yesterday, which was very important, and we're giving out a certificate of recognition to this queen out there. We had one of the youngest viewers on our show yesterday. She's called Helen from South Africa. We don't want to expose her identity. And she's 11 years old. And she sat on this show, and she has been our follower. And she's asking questions. What is it that they in their generation should expect to see? What is the guarantee? What is the security? What is it that they should start learning? Where should they put their focus? Are we coming out with programs that will really just focus on them, on Pan-Africanism and the African unity and the history and culture? And I throw it back to all of you both to answer the question of Helen on this week on the African Liberation Day week.
Well, I would. Well, great. Well, I would say, I think Professor Small said it best. He says, history exposes our enemies' mysteries, and I certainly think it's very important, particularly for our young people, to look at our history of struggle and understand that one of the things that they've tried to do to destroy us is for us not to know who we are, for us not to know that we built this. I'll give you one example of that, maybe for our young person to understand. In the building of the United States, people cannot really grasp the question of the significance of African enslaved labor to producing the wealth of the United States, because they don't really want to tell you about the international economy. But cotton was one of the world's first global international trading products. Cotton. And it helped establish the wealth of the United States and England in their relationship to global dominance. That cotton was picked by Africans. The mechanisms and the machines to pick it came out of the genius of Africans. So don't think that when they reduced our labor to just simple labor, it wasn't simple labor. It was the labor that made things happen. New York City's harbor, to become an international harbor, it was dredged by Africans. There would not be a harbor in New York without Africans. And lastly, the building of Manhattan and the roads and the cutting down of the forests. It was African enslaved labor that did that. So it's for our people to understand that our labor, the value of our labor, they took away from the development of our countries. Mm-hmm. Either colonized us and made us produce things to send to their country, or enslaved us and made us produce for them. They try to minimize what that was. The only way you can unlock what that is to know that history. And that history will set you free in terms of them trying to define who you are. We can never let them define us. Our history, if you struggle to seek it out, will define you. And from that, your genius and your creativity and your energy will be unfold. It will bud like a flower from that. But you got to plant yourself in the soil of our history, in the soil of our toil to build, our genius to create, you know. And once you do that, then you can really bloom as a flower. You can bloom as a tree and be that strong. But it must be planted in those roots. That's what I would say. And if she's listening to this show, she's already making a path for her to know who she is.
Let me add to the question. This is to our little sister, our daughter, our niece, our baby. This is a speech by Lord Macaulay. He addressed the British Parliament on the 2nd of February, 1835. 1835. This is before the Berlin Conference. Listen to his speech. I have traveled across the length and breadth of Africa, and I have not seen one person who is a beggar, who is a thief. Such wealth I have seen in this country, such high moral values, people of such caliber, that I do not think we would ever conquer this country unless we break the very backbone of this nation, which is her spiritual and cultural heritage. And therefore, I propose that we replace her old and ancient education system, her culture, for if the Africans think that all that is foreign and English is good and greater than their own, they will lose their self-esteem, their native culture, and they will become what we want them, a truly dominated nation. He was talking about Nigeria and Benin at that. So they were clear from the beginning, the destruction of our history, the destruction of our culture, the destruction of our spiritual system was how they would defeat us. And those are the tools that's used today with all of the technology available for their propaganda. Like my young sister, embrace the old culture, embrace the ancient culture, go through the rites of passage, dance the dances of the ancestors, wear on occasion of commemoration the dress of the ancestors, learn the history of the Winnie Mandela, learn what happened in Sharpsville when our people was massacred, when our women came to save their children, learn the story of the beautiful Queen Mother priest in Zimbabwe, whose soul became not just the spirit of the revolution in Zimbabwe, but the revolution for the entire continent. Learn about the people in Namibia. Learn the songs of Swapo when they would sing. Swapo would win and they danced through the forest and took on the mightiest white army on the continent and whipped them like children. Send South Africa running home with fear. Send the British and Zionist supporters running with fear. Thanks to the assistance from our great and magnificent brother, Fidel Castro, and our children of formerly enslaved Africans from Cuba. We will never leave him out of our history, because without Fidel, I don't know what we would have done. Without the Africans of Cuba, I don't know what we would have done. Study history. When Patrice Lumumba was assassinated, Fidel dispatched Ernesto Che Guevara to the Congo to help organize and fight the imperialists who had assassinated Lumumba and the collaborators who worked with those people. So history will erase the mystery. It'll let us see who we truly are, the most powerful people on earth, the most spiritual people on earth, with one of the most beautiful cultures in the universe. Matter of fact, our culture is the universe. Our culture was built on understanding the laws of the universe. To create our social ecology, we mastered the natural ecology. That's African culture. harmony, balance, and reciprocity, not only in nature, but in the social society. And we created our rituals, our dances, our sounds to teach those principles to ourselves and our children. That's African culture. Don't get hung up in the culture of someone else's religion and their mythologies and their folklore and fairy tales, even though they took fragments from your knowledge to build them. You have a knowledge bank. It is not dead. It is hidden in the villages of Africa. It is hidden with those at the shrines. It is hidden with those who teach the dances and the drumming and the singing. Let them tell the story. Let them recite the folklore. Let me tell you how deep this is on a simple level. Once I was in the Kinti village in Ghana. You know, Kinti is an extraordinary weaving technology, and no one has been able to copy it to this day, right? They've been trying, but they have not been able to copy how the Kinti is made. So one day I'm talking with the chief of the Kinti village, and he says, oh, let me tell you a story on this hunter who went to hunt one day, and the spider webs was all over his pathway. So he had to tear the spider webs down, and he goes to get his hunting. He caught some meat, and he's on his way back home. But when he gets to that same place, the spider's web is back up there again. And he struggles to tear the spider web down. And so Anansi, which is one of the names for the spiritual essence in that part in the Akan culture, tells him how the spider web is built. And it was coming and hunting and waste all this time. Use our method of building the spider web to create the most beautiful cloth there is. And you can sell that cloth by taking the silk from the silkworm and create something that will be of great wealth to you. So the Kinti cloth is created by imitating the methodology of the spider in creating its web. I mean, that's how connected we are with nature, because we are nature when we speak about it from African culture. We are cosmology when we speak about it from African culture. We are the universe. Those laws is based on justice, harmony, balance, equality, and reciprocity that allows us to build the ethics and the morals that allow us to make sure we can supply food, clothing, shelter, safety, and security with equity for all of our people under a communal, a collective, cooperative, institutional framework. Because the universe and nature is both communal or tripod, communal, collective, and cooperative. Study it. We don't need anybody else's ideology. We've got our own. It's called our culture. It's communal, it's collective, it's cooperative. When it's used properly, we can feed, we can clothe, we can house and protect our kind. When we drop that mantle and pick up the enemies, as that lord from England, so-called, had to say, then we become their slave and their servant, and we beg at their doors, and we get in boats in the Mediterranean, and 1/3 of us drowned trying to get to Europe to look for jobs. Or we get in on planes and fly to Mexico, trying to cross the border in America, losing lives of our family members, leaving our elders home to die without any children to take care of them. We have to stop this. We are the wealthiest continent in the world. We are the most brilliant people in the heavens. We are the parent people of creation itself. Everybody else is a mutation off of the African stock, the black, the blue. History will erase the enemy's mystery and allow you to work your black magic. I love black magic. They're afraid of black magic. That's why they don't want you to love black magic. I love black magic because magic is nothing more than the interpretation and the practice of the laws of nature in an ethical, moral way that's based on communal, collective, and cooperative behavior.
Absolutely. Black magic.
Black magic. Dr. Tata is black magic. Mother Omowale is black magic. You see.
Professor James Small is the Chief of Black Magic.
Oh,
Thank you so much.
A son of black magic.
Yes, a son of Black Magic. Thank you so very much. I mean, it's I don't know how I could thank you. I'm opening up some lines because each time when you're here, I always have this quarterback, like, there's just a lot that we're learning that we don't even dare just open our mouth to do something. But I mean, I still love to open up the lines and for questions, for feedbacks on the December 12th movement, on the commemoration of the Malcolm X Day, on the African Liberation Day. You all have inspirations. All of us are commune, like the professors and our elders are saying. We are one. Professor James Small, I belong to you. You belong to me. We all know that.
You call me.
You call me. Yes. It is a key word on the Pan-African Daily TV. So the lines are open for those that want to throw back questions or reflections or whatever thing that we want to do here on the Pan-African Daily. Apart from that, I would just ask Elder Clay to give us a summary of what we're looking forward with the December 12th movement. Do they have some projects coming up that we need to know? Is the movement kind of, I don't know, like, should other organizations get involved? What is it? What is it that they do? What is the movement doing? Are there events coming up that we need to put up already in the calendar on the December 12th movement? Are we going to celebrate this day as a movement to remember also? What is it that we should be paying attention to when we talk about the December 12th movement? Elder Clay?
I would like to think that you should pay attention to that which we're involved in. We hope will be the cutting edge of what pushes our motion forward. Very recently, and we learn from each other internationally. We have been very involved in supporting the Palestinians' resistance to Zionist and Israeli assaults and their continued occupation of their land. We find a great amount of unity between the oppression of the Palestinians and oppressions of African people. And but the other thing too is Dr. Tata, we don't go into these struggles without history at our back. And so, they've had some tremendous demonstrations here in the United States in support of the resistance of Palestine to Israeli aggression. At the same time, we say to our brothers and sisters and comrades in Palestine that I remember, and Dr. Small can remember that, in 1974, I remember we were the only Black people in a demonstration when Yasser Arafat came to the United Nations to say he comes with an olive branch in one hand and a freedom fighter's Colt 45 automatic pistol in the other, and for people to choose which one the Palestinians will take up. And I remember we had some fights with the racist Jewish Defense League in the streets around the United Nations. I mean, actually some fist fights within the stuff. However, this is 2021, and I don't want people to take our struggle for granted. And when I say that, I say that we support you, and you want us to support us, but the support has to be concrete. If we come to your rallies to demonstrate our solidarity and support, we expect for you to come to the rallies of when Black people are under attack. That the same forces that are colonizing Palestine are the very same forces that killed Malcolm X, who killed Fred Hampton, who assassinated George Floyd. The same forces. And so we need to come together. One of the weakest places for the United States is in the international arena. But we come taking no shorts from anyone. You can't be for Palestinian resistance on Saturday, and on Monday you morph back into an American and then take on the same prejudices as racism and targeting Black people as being not human beings or something particularly criminal about us, as opposed to what's criminal is the very government itself. So we talk to our brothers and sisters, we participate. And the reason we're there is to say to them, you cannot have a Palestine under colonization and a Black nation under colonization and the world be free. Our freedom is part of humanity's freedom. but yet we must respect and be very concrete in what we do in that support. So what we have coming up, and I certainly will make sure I send you now that as Dr. Smalls has introduced me, and I'm so happy and proud of this Pan-African and internationalist right here, who will go on forever, as he says. He will never pass away from us, because he's laid such a trail of not only knowledge, but how to seek the knowledge. I think Dr. Smalls said, how do you get to know yourself? How do you get to know who you are? As Malcom said, who's made you this dumb? How do you undumb yourself? And then all your genius and stuff will come out. Juneteenth is coming up, which has been traditionally a day celebrated in Texas, where Black slaves in Texas did not find out that the Emancipation had been written and they had been freed for a year, till a year afterwards, until they got there. So they had been enslaved, working a whole nother year before they even knew they had been free. That was before the internet. But the bottom line is, so Juneteenth has been celebrated as a celebration in Texas, and now it's become a national celebration in New York, Juneteenth, that they're going to make a city and state holiday now. And so you say, oh, boy, they're giving us a holiday. However, our theme this Juneteenth, Dr. Smalls, is Juneteenth, not yet free. Not yet free. And in that spirit, on this Juneteenth coming, the city and state is celebrating it on Friday, but June 19th is the day, that Saturday, and we will be shutting down the street in front of Sister's Place, Dr. Small, where we declared Frederick Douglass Square a year ago on July 4th. And those street signs are still up, Dr. Small.
I saw them. I saw them last week.
They're still there. And so we're claiming the street. We're shutting down the street. The buses have to go a different way, whatever. And we're taking over that street on Juneteenth to promote that, yes, Juneteenth, but we're not yet free. And one of those issues that show that is the health care of our people. It's one of the greatest weapons that they've used against us. Dr. Tata, they still have ships and refrigeration trucks that have dead bodies from the pandemic in warehouses right now. As we speak, there are hundreds and hundreds of bodies that are in refrigerated trucks in New York City that have not been buried in terms of that. We have senior citizens that were devastated by the pandemic, not because of any preconditions. The preconditions that killed them were being the sons and daughters of enslaved people in that sense. And so healthcare has been a tremendous contradiction for us and a tremendous weapon against us. Before our people can get out of the gate, it's an attack on our very health itself. So one of the themes of this Juneteenth is not yet free. Healthcare is a human right. And so we'll be taking over the street. Dr. Small, if he is in the world, he will be there on Juneteenth. You gotta say in New York or if he's in the world, I know we'll get him on Juneteenth to what we claim is liberated territory that day, Dr. Smalls. So we shutting down the street. And so, in fact, Dr. Smalls is our first invitation to speak at this Juneteenth.
Okay.
So that's something coming up. That's something coming up, and certainly, we continue our support and fight against the sanctions against Zimbabwe, which Dr. Small spoke about so eloquently. And just the building, like I said, we have to start. We have to keep making moves. And so I look at being on your program as one of those moves we're making. You know what I'm saying? Now that we know each other, this is part of this is black magic that's going on, Dr. Tata. This is the black magic that has to go on because their weakness is in the international situation. That's where the United States is weakest, is internationally, and we have to build on that.
Thank you very much. I'll pick up this call from a caller that has been waiting, and then we go back to Professor James Moore. Hello?
Yes, thank you so much, sister, and hello, brother Professor James Small and brother Omowale. Thank you. It's such a high honor. I'm calling from Turks and Caicos Island, and my name is Hosea, and I have a question. what can we do with all the African nations to speed up the visas for African people to all come back home? What can we do to knock down the barriers so people in the diaspora that's Black that could come back to Africa with like no borders? And I take your answer off there. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Well,
We talked about this at our African Liberation Day celebration in terms of, I think, Dr. Smalls, you were talking about citizenship and stuff.
Mm.
And a big part of it is learn the history of the nation you want to go to. Learn about their struggles. Learn about their heroines and their heroes. Study Pan-Africanism. And like you and Turks and Caicos, learn about that history, about the African people there. I know you have great heroes and heroines who waged the struggle against imperialism and the slavery there. Learn about those in Haiti and Jamaica. See, it's this history that allows us to link up and feel like you belong to the other one.
Yes.
That's the beautiful thing about culture. It makes you feel like you belong to the rest of your people. So that's always the key. And if you desire to move to the continent, first go for a visit, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Get to know the people in the communities. Get to know what the regulations and laws for immigration is. Get to know what the path to citizenship is in that country. You know, get to understand the labor laws in that country, because you still have to provide food, clothing, shelter, safety for yourself and your family, no matter where you are in the world. Find out who are the liberators, who are the activists, who are the Pan-Africanists in that community. Because the Pan-Africanists and the activists that's trying to bring about this union, that's a permanent union where we feel like we belong to one another. You see?
Okay. The next question. Yeah. Hello.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello, Susan.
Good evening. Welcome. Yes. Mr. Brett.
Yes, Susan. Yeah. Good evening, and to you and your two gentlemen, Dr. Small and Omowale Clay. You know, Susan, I raised on our airwaves about we have a continent to build.
Yes.
And I'm calling from Caribbean island of St. Kitts and Nevis. I made mention today on one of our talk shows that we have a continent to build, and I mentioned raddi.org. Now, we have an elderly here who says that, you know, she rebut my statement when I said that, you know, we can invest in having the continent built through ADDI. And she said, an elderly here who I have great respect for, and she said something along the line that, you know, if we go back to Africa, they're not going to place us in the city to live. They're going to put us in the bushes as if we're going to start from scratch. I don't know if the professor or Omowale Clay can shed light onto this, but, you know, hearing her saying that, and, you know, I don't know how privy she is to the development. But President Nana has opened up for people from the diaspora in terms of the Wakanda city. And, you know, it was quite disturbing to hear my elderly here in St. Kitts mention about, you know, if we go back, they're going to place us in, we won't be placed in the city. We won't have the opportunity to be living in the city. We'll have to go into the bushes. So if anyone can shed light on that, I will be grateful to hear.
Okay.
Well, let me start it.
Yes. Yes.
Well, first, the concept of the bushes is a negative.
Yes, thanks.
Because it's the people in the bushes and the agricultural sector that feeds all nations in the world. I come from the bushes in South Carolina. I love the country. But I've been working in Ghana since 1983. I have two corporations in Ghana, the African American Management Company Ghana Limited and the Sana Lodge, Ghana Limited. We own a hotel and we own a beachfront entertainment cafeteria, blah, blah, blah. In Cape Coast City, there is over 7,000 African Americans who live in Ghana permanently.
Correct.
Since started coming since the days of Nkrumah, and that it didn't just start last year with the year of return. We had 7,000 people plus before the year of return. There's over 12,000 Jamaican nationals that live in Ghana, and we live in every sector. It depends on the skills you bring to the table. It depends on the employment sector you want to be a part of. If you're going to be a nurse, a doctor, an educator, a salesperson, you may want to be in agriculture. You may want to be in agricultural supplies. If you're into construction, that determines where you'll settle in any society, and it's the same in Africa.
Correct.
And the beautiful thing, many nations are now trying to take the step that Ghana has taken. Matter of fact, Ghana has a bill that's coming before Parliament within a month for final vote that will offer to all the offsprings of the transatlantic slave trade automatic citizenship. They've been fighting to get this done for years. President Rollins initiated, but you've had those who have fought back. But finally, the package is together. It looks wonderful. And so as anything, there's always a process. But other nations are also looking at, because you can't just tell people to come on and come into your country. There must be a process of acculturation and understanding. But other nations are beginning to do this. We know most African nations do not need a visa to move in and out of the countries. We know there's new trade agreements that allow Africans to cross borders now without paying tax. And so things are growing in that unity. But some of the cities in Africa are some of the most beautiful capitals in the world. And you can get on YouTube now and see the capital and large cities of any African. The rural area, which you're calling the bush, is some of the most beautiful communities in the world. In America, we call them suburbia. In the Caribbean, we call them suburbs. So don't call it a bush because it's in Africa. It's the same suburb you're talking about. It's the same small town, small village you're talking about. If we need to work and be a part of building a new road and building drainage facilities beside the road, then that's our contribution. Let's go make that contribution, But no, every village needs a doctor, needs a nurse, needs a teacher, needs an engineer, you understand, needs a cook, needs a chef to run the restaurant, needs a carpenter, needs an electrician, needs a mechanic. All these skills are needed no matter where you live. For me, I live in a small suburb in Cape Coast called Ola. I don't live directly in the city. And then I love being in Ola. It's a small village. I can walk around it in less than an hour. And it's not bush. These are my beautiful neighbors. We have everything we need. We assist one another. We got beautiful schools. We have a small park. So no, we have to just change our views and opinion by studying and going on the internet. And you can actually use the, what's the global camera, where you can look at any African community you want from your laptop, you see, by using the Google map. You can go and zoom right into my hotel and see me sitting there drinking some kvass on Sunday after dinner, you see. So we just have to learn. Again, this is where history gets rid of the mystery. And as we gain information about ourselves, we better remove the mysteries and the fears that come with those mysteries.
Thank you so very much, Prof. I mean, I couldn't have said it that much better, but like me, I'm a village girl. So let me just say I'm a bush girl, right? And so any African in the diaspora that has not had that inspiration or what it is, Africa, or how does it look like, or how does the bush look like?
Let me say
they should look at me.
Dr. Right, and you see the most beautiful people in the world come from the bush, as they say. I have a company, it's called Cultural Heritage African Tours. It's about
Yes.
40 years old. We do tours to Africa. The
Correct.
one place that has had the greatest effect on the people who travel with me is not the cities. They're infatuated and surprised to see the beautiful modernity in Africa.
Mm.
It's when I take them to the village.
Correct.
That sells them. Once you take them to the village, hey, they don't want to come back to America no more. You know.
Yeah.
So it's just a beautiful thing. There's a spirit of humanity, a love, and ingathering. If you go to the average village and there's a funeral, and you've come a stranger, somebody will bring you a red cloth and put it around your wrist and give you a seat to participate in the festival of sending an ancestor home. They don't say, oh, these strangers have no place, you know? If you come to a village, the first thing they offer you is something to drink. Because you've been on the road, you've been on a journey, something to drink, and then something to eat. And then share their history, share the culture, share their humanity. That captures the people every time.
Yes.
You know.
Thank you. I don't even know how I want to say it. It's another kind of a learning. I'm happy about that question, and I'm also happy. Bright, you brought up that from the Kids Island. Thank you so very much. It shows how much deep we need to really go to educate and to communicate and to share. The culture of the African, like the Bushman and the village, that is exactly where the black magic we're talking about exists.
Absolutely.
And if you go to Africa, you don't go to the Bushman. I don't even want to call it a village, because a village is still maybe suburb. I want to call it the bush, exactly like they put it. If you go to Africa, even the diaspora, even our children that are here, and you have never been to the bush, then you are not an African and you've never been an African. So you just leave the skyscrapers here and you land in the modern cities. That is just not Africa. That is the new Africa that we're talking about, that we need to derail. You will never get that spiritual feeling of culturalness in your history there. Your history is hidden, like Professor James Small, in these bushes. It is hidden in the cowries, in the ceremonies, in this, I don't know how I can even say, the luxury of the African is hidden in the bush. And if you want to be a millionaire, a billionaire, a wealthy African, a queen, a royal, you need to go get it from the bush. That's just all I can say. And like I said, if you want to get it, you see me, I'm the bush girl. I'm the Bamenda girl. And so it's everything that tells you the hidden jewelry and the diamond of the African is in the bush. But of course, if you are not that
magic woman.
Yes. 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 So it's very, very accurate. And that's why I see the ADDI try to use the Wakanda City model, because it is to actually kill this fear of the African that says, I want a modern city. I want to feel my environment like where I was living. So it's just a geographical space living the United States and just being in a continent in the same environment. So what difference does it make? But irrespective of that, that is also available. That's the beauty of Africa. You have everything you want. If you want to swim in the rivers, you go there, you swim. You want to go to the oceans, you go to the oceans. But if you just want to say, I need just a bathtub and a swimming pool, you can get it. That's the difference of Africa. But we also will be doing a lot of tips and tricks with the collaboration of the tour guide of the company of my elder, Professor James Small, to multiply this tour on the entire continent of Africa. And so we want to give our people the real diamond, where it is, what makes them the true African that has been stolen away from them. That's all a lie. Okay, so I really thank brother for bringing up this aspect, and we'll be doing special editions of cultural tours. Yes, I know we did a lot into our history. freedom fighters, like, this is the week of the liberation. But of course, you want to enjoy the beauty. You haven't even tasted the cuisines of Africa. We haven't even started yet with the fabrics, like Professor James Small has said. We haven't even just started with the multiple of traditions and setup and different types of beauty and flavors. We haven't even started. We're still just gathering around the compound to know who we are, bringing out our stolen children, bringing out the lust, and now they are found. We're still not even there. We still have a long way to go to uncover this mystery, like he is saying, for you to know the diamond that you've been missing or that has been stolen from you. And all this, you will get it. This is the journey that is only starting. We are not at the end yet. So I want to thank all of you. I mean, it's incredible to have all of you here all the time. And like, the questions that we took was very relevant. Now, one round for Elder Clay before we leave you, your last word. And when are we seeing you again? I've already noted June, June 10th. June 10th is 19, and we are saving it also in the calendar on December 12th movement. And so we're also going to make that date a very important date, and we're going to make it a week on the Pan-African Daily, June 10th week. And so we're going to get different speakers to talk about this event. And so every event has to get a prototype of a week discussion. And so it sticks in the brain. So over to you, Elder Clay.
Yeah, I would just say in closing that I'm very glad he asked that question too, because, we can't go to Africa with a European mindset.
Yes.
Africa doesn't need that. They don't have the, and we can't go to Africa as if Africa owes us something, as opposed to what can we contribute to Africa. We can't go to Africa as I'm going to go to Africa so I can make $1 million and I can be rich, and then I can have some servants. You know what I mean? We can't go there with that mindset. We have to go with it to the question of the greatest question in Africa right now is lifting up the humanity and the quality of life for the masses of people in Africa. Yes. It is true. It is true. Corruption is, I think it was Elijah Muhammad, Dr. Small said, corruption is a European cultural idea. The idea of corruption. The idea of you look somebody in the face and you say, we agree, and then you turn right around and you align. That whole form of interaction is so European based in that sense. And that's why when the professor was talking about the question of what Cabral talked about, where did the liberation movement come from in Africa? They came from the rural areas, because that's where the culture of Africa is based on. That's where the culture rose up from the land and the struggle for production. And colonizers came and took that labor and directed it to their own wealth. So our idea cannot be to go and make money off of Africans. We want to come to contribute to the development of Africa. And I thought what Professor Small said is true. What skill do you bring that you can share? And yes, we all want to have food, clothing, and shelter, and a better quality of life, but nobody wants that more than the people trapped in the ghettos of America, the underdeveloped collectivities of underdevelopment in America and in Africa. So as we've seen in South America, when poverty reaches a certain level, the masses themselves produce their own leaders to say who is interested in lifting up the quality of life of the masses, not for a few millionaires who fly around in jets and Mercedes-Benz cars, but who raise the quality of healthcare, shelter, culture, education. You know what I mean? Those kind of things, And so coming to Africa is an honor to come to contribute to your ancestors' homeland and to be a part of that building. But do not come to Africa. And I think, Dr. Tata, you started out saying, do not come to America looking at Black people as, why haven't you done better?
Yes.
I said this to this Jamaican mailman building one time. He was talking about the sisters that are in there. That were
Net. That's when we get too powerful.
Yeah, so you kind of get funky around it, because the bottom line is, don't you dare judge us as opposed to the struggle for our liberation. And
Yes.
don't come with a European mindset. Whether you come here or go there. Pan-Africanism is to make us understand who we are and who we're for and who we're against. You know, and if without that clarity, then we're only adding, we're not part of the solution, we're part of the problem.
Correct. Absolute. Absolute.
I have to run, but let me say, the black magic has happened. I'm gonna send you this stuff on Juneteenth. You already know who one of our keynote speakers is. He's right there next to me on the screen. Professor Smalls will be there and stuff. But it's wonderful meeting you. Dr. Top, of course, that's my boss calling me.
Well, thank you so much, brother. I know you're at work, so you need to get back to work and talk to the councilwoman.
Straight ahead. I'm gone. Take care. Black power.
Get ahead.
Bye-bye. Thank you so very much. Thank you so much, Elder Clay. Yeah, thanks. Wow. Good. Professor James Moore. Now we go.
Gave him an extended lunch break. And she's a beautiful African sister and a beautiful revolutionary and a member of our city council in New York.
Beautiful. Thank you so very much, Professor James Moore, for making this work. I know how you struggled to really get him out of his lunch to be with us on this show. And that is a massive thing that he's doing out there. That's why we see those challenges, because he's actually in his back office trying to serve us even when he's at work. So we do understand we had the spirit and we had the feeling and the connection. That's very important. Even the words, I just don't even think the word matters. The connection of the spirit speaks to us without even words, and we feel the warmth and the love and the unity. Professor James Moore, now we know Juneteenth. You are the guest speaker, the prominent guest speaker.
Well, you know, Juneteenth is an interesting phenomenon. Like he said, what it tells us is our struggle is not over. It was an occasion when the Civil War in America ended and Abraham Lincoln, the president, passed an emancipation bill that said the Africans would free. The Africans in one of the biggest states, Texas, did not learn about it until 2 years afterwards. They were kept enslaved because those rulers kept that information from them. And when the government sent a general named Gardner with an army to Texas to free them, to inform them that they had been free for 2 years, and to let the people know on the 19th of June, you can no longer hold these people enslaved. That's the date we call Juneteenth. Because we felt none of us was free until the last of us was free. So even though the majority was free for 2 years, we don't really celebrate that. We celebrate the time when the last of us was free on June 19th, 2 years after the emancipation. And so it's becoming a very significant celebration of our history, of our culture, because though they strip us of our clothes in Africa and they made us take their names, they could not take Africa out of our mind. They could not take Africa out of our DNA. You cannot do that. They could not take Africa out of our spirits. So whatever we did it as Africans. When we opened a church, it was the African Methodist Episcopal Church. That's what we call it. In the 1700s. When we opened our Masonic Lodge, it was called the Free African Lodge. Okay. In the 1800s, when we opened our Baptist church, it was called the African Baptist Church. We never forgot where we came from. We always, our first major political organization, 1892, the Afro-American League, we never forgot. Understand? So people say, oh, they took everything. No, they took what they could, but they couldn't take what was in our minds. They couldn't take the spirit in our DNA. They couldn't take the soul of the ancestors that stayed around through the genocide. When we dance in our church, they say, oh, they're shouting like a Christian. No, those are our ethnic dance from the village in Africa that our ancestors passed down.
Mm.
So you go to a church today and you see them shouting. You say, oh, they're having a good time with Jesus. No, they're dancing the dance their grandmother taught them, who their great-grandmother taught, who their great-grandmother taught before they left Africa. They still dance the dance in the church today. You see? They say, oh, they're clapping. Well, those claps were drum rhythms that we remembered. So we clapped the drum rhythm. We clapped the drum rhythm in our churches because that's what we could remember. To this day. So to be African is to be human. And that's what we are. That's why Look on Me is so wonderful. You belong to me. I belong to you. You always laugh at me when I do that.
Yes, I mean, if you can get the African code activated in you when Professor James here is on the Pan-African Daily TV, I don't know how your African code is going to be activated again. I don't know what kind of magic. The moment you listen to Professor James Small, it is not. It's a confession. It's the word of the ancestors speaking. And it is the decoding of your Africanness, of your blackness, of your melanin. It activates the code that was uncoded. There is no way to say it anymore. Whether it's through the voice, the power in the voice that is shaking, or it's just there on Professor James Moore, his coolness. Yes. And every day he's younger and younger and younger and younger.
Oh,
so there's no way we can decode. We can decode the Africanness in us. There's no way. And you watch the Pan-African Daily TV, you watch Professor James Moore, you watch our elders, you watch these voices. I don't think there's even going to be a format where we're talking about how is it going to be. It is already happening in our spirituality by decoding this code and just relating you back. The script that you were encrypted and coded is just a decodation of it. And so freedom is here. It's just now the formalities, the movement, the actions, supporting one another, coming together. It's a physical reality, but the spirituality is already decoded. Professor James Moore.
Dr. Susan Tata. Thank
we
you
love
so
you
much.
so much.
Yeah.
We love you. We respect you. We cherish you. We honor you. We serving you. Yes. And because every one step draw us closer to who we are. Prof, leave us with something tonight before we disperse from the family.
The key thing, in the beginning was just God. Nothing exists but God. In Ghana, they said, Jinyami, Nananyami, only God exists. So who are we? Aspects of the divine having the human experience. In that regards, the African woman is the first experience of the divine as a human being. And she gave birth to the rest of us. And all that mutated off of us. And when we understand that alone, that we are an expression of an aspect of the divine essence, which is the totality of creation itself, having this peculiar human experience, like the cells in God's body. You understand? And that is African culture. That understanding is African culture. That's what the European is chasing and calling the theory of one. But he'll never find it because you can only find it if you can be it. And he cannot be it. We are it, but we don't know how yet to find it in ourselves. That comes to studying your history, studying your culture, studying your spirituality, and learning to love yourself as you love God. If you can do that, God will know that you love it. Because if God is omnipotent, omnipresent, omnipotent, and supreme, nothing else can exist, but always remember that. Then what are you? An aspect of that existence, having your peculiar experience. Know that, and you can rebuild the African ethical, moral, spiritual reality and harmony, balance, and reciprocity for everybody.
Ashe.
Ashe.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Prof. And yes, we'll be keeping in touch on the African Liberation Week. Probably, maybe, if we are lucky, we can have you again this week before it runs to an end. I don't know. But if we're lucky.
Maybe Saturday.
Maybe Saturday, yes.
We'll
Thank you. Thank you so much. And there's a call coming in. I definitely think this would be for you before you leave.
Okay.
Hello.
Okay.
Yes, hey, thank you so much. I have a follow-up question, Professor Smalls. I wanted to ask, what will it take for us to perhaps develop an airline industry, a Ghanaian airline industry or independent airline industry to develop right in Ghana or elsewhere? Will it be cost efficient? And take the answer up there. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you so very much.
You know, Ghana had one of the most beautiful industries on the continent, with some of the most competent pilots on the continent. But it was sabotaged by the Americans and Delta. And I think it may be 10 or 12 years now where they pushed us out of business. But we had a Ghana airline for decades. One of the greatest pilots in the world. I'll tell you a quick story. We're flying out of New York for Ghana. We are like maybe 2 hours out. And all of a sudden, boom, the plane started shaking. And the pilot, I remember when he started turning, I go like, uh-oh, this doesn't sound good, because we're 2 hours out on the Atlantic Ocean. There isn't too many places to go. And he says, he came on with his Ghana accent, "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a bit of a problem." I said, "What we do? We've got a bit of a problem." He brought that airline down till you could see the ocean ripple from its vibration. And he brought us back to Kennedy Airport. And he landed that plane talking to us to keep us calm along the way. When we got to Long Island Sound, the body of water off of Kennedy, we saw all of the ships racing out to meet us because they thought we would crash, because they had given him the orders to set the ship down in the water. And he refused to do it, this Ghanaian pilot. He landed us at Kennedy, and he tried to go to the terminal, and they made us go back out on the tarmac way in the field. And then the FBI and everybody came with their guns and made everybody get on the floor because they thought it was a bomb. But what happened around the cargo bay, the seal had given way and blew open. But the expertise, the calmness, the skills that man flew that plane back to Kennedy. And then they told people, well, you know, because people were very frightened, shaken. And they says, listen, anybody that don't want to go, you can leave the plane. And me, I says, I'm with a pilot like that. If I'm going to fly anywhere, I'm flying back to Ghana with him. So I'll sit on the plane while they repair the door. And the lady said, well, is there anything I can get you? Give me a nice bottle of Cabassier and give me some peanuts. And I'm going to relax for 4 hours, which I did. And in that same plane, with that same pilot, we flew to Accra that same night. What we have to do, this is why we need our entrepreneurs, our people with wealth, because there is a Ghana airline. It exists, but it's local now. It flies to Nigeria, to Senegal. I forgot the name of it. But to come back and build a national airline is going to take investments from those of us in the diaspora, as well as investment from our wealthy people at home. And we have to protect it from other corporate raiders. So what happened when Delta came in will never happen again. It was the Mormon Church, a part of that collaboration to destroy, yes, I will say it, to destroy Ghana Airways, you know, which was equal, the only equal that had on the continent was Ethiopian Airways, which is one of our beautiful airlines. So whenever you want to fly to Ghana, even though it takes a few hours more to stop in Addis, take Ethiopian Air. Not only do you have the most beautiful Africans working there and running it, it is one of the most beautiful airline service you could have, you know. While we rebuild Ghana Airways, it's possible, but it's going to take unity and Pan-Africanism on the ground and the kind of collaboration that will bring our capital together to be able to invest in that project to become an international airline again.
Professor James, I'm going to put you in contact with the brother that just called. I think
okay. Yes,
there's a lot that we can handle offline. Yes,
yeah.
In terms of this, yeah, right. So thank you, Prof, and
thank you, Susan.
everyone that has been here, and we are going to see us again on Saturday with you live on the show. Thank you so very much. Thank
Peace
you.
And blessings. Peace and
Yes.
blessings.
Yes, this is a very important week, the African Liberation Week, and I still call you to tune in tomorrow. Tomorrow, probably we're going to have Professor Obati Shaka, and you know him. He's the godfather of freedom and liberation of the African people. He said it a couple of times, and he owns it, and he's responsible for every word he makes. And so we probably would be blessed to have Professor T. Obashaka here. You know him, the cute, sweet. You know, all our elders become, I don't know, it's a spirit. Like we say, the melanated people don't grow old. I mean, we know in the hip hop culture or the common language, black don't crack. But you know what? The spirit remains fresh and new and young. Yes, because anything that is detoxed of self-hate, anything that is detoxed of self-hate stays young and fresh and alive and healthy. And so the African spiritually conscious is detoxed. And so they remain young and fresh and healthy. You don't need no healthcare, beauty, bottoms or facelift or powders or whatever. They just stay cute and sweet. And you would see Dr. T. Obashaka. Sweet, I'm telling you. And you look at Professor James Small. You look at Professor Baina Bello. You look at Dr. Arikana Shikombori. You look at Professor Pielo Lumumba. You look at the voices, the queens, the princes, and the kings. They stay young, beautiful, just sweet. That's us. Yes. So tomorrow, I am just so happy and honored that we're going to have Dr. Obati Shaka. Naisha, you're watching me in this program. If you can confirm that even through your chat, I see you've been chatting, to thank your guests for being here. Thank you so very much. Naisha is my PA. As you know, you want to be a guest on the show, you want to contribute in one way or the other, or you want a quick response to get to me, you just have to go through Naisha Malcom. I mean, her contact is available on the Pan-African Daily TV WhatsApp groups, and also it can also be requested, and she's the one responding to chats and messages. So Naisha is 24/7 busy, even though she's a young daughter, a princess, a research student, but she's doing an incredible job anytime for us here. So yes, address all your concerns and questions. Naisha is confirming that Obatishe is going to be with us. Yes, I just heard you, Chinozo, about King Bishop Maponga. We're still working on that. Now you don't even know what is going on in the background. Sometimes, you know, Rutendo, I don't want to call some names. If you see us, just be quiet. Please understand. Just understand. You know what I mean? Just understand. But yeah, they're fine, they're safe, they're okay. Every other opportunity that we will have, they will be available on the Pan-African Daily TV unannounced. I paused for a second and I said unannounced. So you know what I mean. What I mean is that make sure you have your notification bells on and you're subscribed. And so when they pop up, there are going to be a lot of our elders and our people that will not be announcing on flyer or on the daily trailer for obvious reasons. So they will be unannounced, right? Good. So fine. You keep it safe and keep yourself beauty out there, loving yourself, uniting, and just a positive energy to like I said, the opposite. Self-hate is just hating yourself and thinking you're doing it for someone else. Don't do that. Love yourself. You love humanity in Africans. So we see ourselves tomorrow, same time. And please be patient. Like today, you see the challenges are becoming even more viable. That we don't even keep this time is not our own concern, but also that's not our way of life. You know, the Pan-African Daily is really a spiritual, I can say, from the ancestors given. And so sometimes they really just do it intentionally. When something doesn't work, you understand what we talk. We're spiritual beings. You know what we're talking about. We're not focused and functional on 8 p.m. has to be punctual. We're decoding to just know that we function by our feelings and we incorporate it without just being physical. So now I think in the long run, we start understanding. Also, I've been too worked up, Naisha and the team. Sometimes when we were nervous from the beginning when we really were not taken deeper into our journey. But right now we know. There are even some days if we don't come live or because of some things, we just understand they want it that way. Or they don't want someone to speak or whatever message that is not appropriate for us. So these are all trainings that we want to see the difference of us being different, right? Like we say, we still want it, but we're still hanging up to it. We have to be punctual. We have to be 7 p.m. And are you that? Who owns the clock and who owns the time? Know who you are. History would erase the mystery. So thank you so very much. We see us tomorrow, same time. Stay blessed. Bye-bye. Good night.
You are watching the Pan-African Daily TV with Dr. Susan Tata. The Africa we want. Unity, consciousness, our culture, our spirituality, our history. One Africa for Africans worldwide. Motherland's calling its diaspora home. Join my voice. Join my team. Join my campaign. Campaign 21 hashtag 1 million subscribers on the Pan-African Daily TV YouTube. Be a volunteer. Apply now. Be the new Africa.